Woohoo! Oh yeah. 5 minutes and $200 later. So, as always, I have fun at the chrome shop. Spent a lot of money, but I got a lot of things. Check my trailer, get ready to go here. I had my usual discourse with the guys in the counter over my Love's cart. They don't understand why the magnetic strip is on the back. It doesn't work that way. I'm pretty sure it does. Well, someone had a bad day. All this right here is why people don't want us around. So, it does seem like I spent a lot of money. You're like, well, you just put mud flaps and stuff on there. Well, those mud flaps were cheap till I found the ones I wanted. And some nice hangers, you know, some weights to keep them from twisting. But, you know, the price wasn't bad, but for what I paid for everything back there, that's basically what they were charging, you know, like they wanted like $188 a mud flap for one of these over at Walcott. It was ridiculous. And I was like, I'm not paying that. $54 a piece. Empire Chrome. I like them. I do pretty good there. So, let me get on with today. So I was thinking about options today and advice that you're given. And lately, especially when it comes to this truck, I've been getting a lot of advice. And most of it's been wrong, especially when it comes to fixing it in certain parts. I'll explain. Well, I was fortunate enough when I got in here a little bit ago. I got the very last spot. One opened up right there, but that is the last spot. So, when I talk about advice, well, it goes back to, you know, these check engine lights and whatnot and trying to get them figured out. And it's all just doom and gloom and worst case scenario. This is why you take advice with a grain of salt, but do your homework. Now, usually when you get on a forum, the one guy everybody's laughing at usually ends up being the guy who's right. So, what do I talk about doom and gloom and all that? Well, I'll start off with this story. On a Crown Vic forum, guy says brake lights on. You know, it was the e-brake light. You know, what can this? Oh, PCM, ECM, this, that, electrical, this, that. I was like, dude, just pull the handle and make sure your brake switch is all the way, your brake pedal's all the way up. You know, do your research. So what does that have to do with my check engine light? Well, my coolant sensor's been going off, and I'm trying to figure out, you know, is it this? Is it the wire? Well, we need a new sensor. Well, I ran into a problem. Every bit of advice I'd gotten about the sensor has turned out to be wrong. What I've discovered is that there was a 2-wire sensor, a 3-wire sensor, and everybody got them all backwards. And then there's about 3 different aftermarket tanks. And suddenly I realized why everybody goes ahead and just replaces the tank with the sensor and plugs it in, because there's a bunch of different variants. It all plugs into the same harness, but everything's just a little different because aftermarket. OEM is not what it used to be. OEM has changed. Anymore, OEM is just aftermarket parts made by the same guy that makes the aftermarket parts. Like, for instance, Bosch. You know, if you want to buy a coil for your Ferrari, you can buy a coil for a Ferrari for about $300 or one from Bosch for $40. Same part number, no horse on top. Same kind of deal like that. But So I get looking at it, and I realize that the guy's like, well, what color's your sensor? I was like, what does that have to do? Well, the black ones are the 3-wire, and the white ones are the 2-wire. I was like, well, it's a white one. So I said, it's a 2-wire. I go looking at it, and I'm like, realize it's a 2-wire, it's a 3-wire. So they were wrong on that. And then I got looking at the tanks, like I told you, and there was about 2 or 3 different aftermarket tanks, and it got in a whole mess. So I just decided we're just going to wait till I get it to a shop and just attack it from there. One thing I've learned is that truck parts are just too expensive to be throwing money around on a whim. You've got to be smart how you buy, and you've got to know where to buy and who to buy from. That's why getting a lot of these parts through the company that I'm leased to is so important, because I've had them knock $200, $300, and $400 off parts. I get great deals on labor and whatnot. So sometimes it's better just to wait. Now, there's a couple workarounds and all that with this buzzing, and it doesn't buzz too much right now. But when it goes off, it'll drive you nuts. But you end up watching the temp and make sure you don't smell antifreeze and all that, and usually it pretty much works out. But what about the other engine codes? Well, got a hold of one of these tactical force flashlights the other day. Apparently, it's also a stun gun. I have no idea how it works. Oh, here we go. Yeah. I think it's kind of cool. It's a little cheesy, but I like it. So when it comes to check engine lights, this is when I talk about building a relationship with your vehicle. One thing, when these emission systems came out, like my first truck didn't have DEF, and my next 2 trucks have, you start learning the systems. And thankfully, I've been real blessed to get to know a lot of people who work on these, but not only developed, serviced, troubleshot. I went to school with a friend of mine who has been very instrumental in these, and he taught me a lot about how these systems work. So now, when you get a check engine light pop up, if you go online, and if I was to go online and put the check engine light, it would be just doom and gloom. I know it's a ghost code. So when this truck started having problems, started popping check engine lights, it popped pretty much the same way the last truck did. Well, we went into the shop, checked it out, same exact code, same exact FMI number, which made sense because it's a same engine. Well, it's an X15, not an ISX, but same deal. So I knew it was good, and we just went about our business. You're going to get a lot of advice in this business, and the majority of it, I'm not going to lie, the majority of it is going to be useless. It's going to be crap. But you still need to listen to it, and you have to sit there and weigh every piece of advice that you get, and just measure it, discern it, try it, put it through the fire, whatever you want to call it. It's much like vetting a new girlfriend. If she treats her dad like crap and she's mean to her dog, you probably don't want to date her. But yeah, you need to take every piece of advice you get with a grain of salt, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. You just need to prove it first. And a lot of times that comes at a little bit of a cost, but sometimes it's not a bad deal. As I've stated before, you've got to make your own decisions when it comes to your truck. If this is your truck, you own it outright, or you're the one making payments on it. Basically what I'm saying, if it's your truck and it's your way to do business, you need to make sure this truck is doing exactly what you need it to do. You operate this truck at your pleasure, not anybody else's. This is your way to make money. And so you need to be very familiar with it. And you're going to get lots of advice about everything from the fuel to use to finances, how to do your finances, how to do this, how to do that. and you're going to have to pick, just basically cherry pick the little nuggets from each bit of advice you get and try it out. Because just because it worked for your buddy's grandpa 35 years ago doesn't mean it's going to work for you now. Financial hardship out here is a very real deal, especially in the first 3 years of truck ownership. Or if you're leasing a truck, it's worse. But yeah, I'm sorry, I shouldn't talk like that. I want you lease guys to make it. I just have a very dark place in my heart for leases. And it doesn't have anything to do with you drivers. It's that I've said this before. I believe that the average lease from the company is very predatory. It's not geared towards driver success. It's just not. Very rarely do I see a lease that's even remotely worth. Yeah, let's not revisit this right now. But when it comes down to finances, you need to have a handle on your finances, because you're going to get a lot of advice. And most of that advice is going to be wrong. Especially when it comes to your individual situation. I don't know your individual situation. That's why I don't talk a lot about finances here, other than saving your money and doing your taxes and making sure your truck is tip-top shape. As it comes to your home and stuff like that, these are things that you have to answer yourself. You're going to get a lot of advice out here, and you need to weigh every bit of it. Now, I'm not saying you got to be cheap, but you have to be very careful about how you spend your money, where you spend your money, who you give your money to, and not only that, how all of these little transactions and whatnot process, because a slip out here can be very expensive. And I want you guys to be successful. So taking advice, take it with a grain of salt, especially when it comes to your finances. There's a lot of good advice out there. A lot of crap, like I said. Yeah, a lot of crap. Part of what people get wrong is most advice isn't advice. It's an opinion. It's nothing's more truer than social media. I remember every year when tax time comes around, everybody asks the same 4 questions, which they could very easily get answers for if they would talk to a tax accountant or a CPA. Don't get your tax advice from social media or anybody from a big chain tax store, because those are not tax professionals. They are money lenders. That's why they're there. They are there to lend you money and give you a quick refund and take a very goodly percentage of it. That's a story for another day. So one of the things that used to get people in a lot of trouble, especially, was advice on taxes. I don't know how many people I know that have gotten audited because instead of getting a CPA or doing the proper, what they should have been doing to begin with, because they're being lazy and cheap, they just ask questions and then pick the answer that sounds right to them. And we all know that always works swimmingly. So yeah, I've known guys that get audited. Per diem was the big thing. Per diem is easy to understand, but it's a little tricky if you don't know what you're doing. And as a company driver, I guess it's really not a thing anymore. But when you're looking for advice about things of that nature, guys, find a professional. That's why they're there. And trust me, a good tax person is worth the money. That's advice. It's not my opinion. Because a good tax person will save you a lot of money, if there's money to be saved. Figure it out yourself. That's why I'm doing this video. One of the things that always cracked me up about people giving their advice was about fuel and fuel discounts. It's really easy to understand if you have the proper tools. Most people do not. If you have a good fuel card and a good fuel system, and you're backed by good people, you will never pay the pump price. And I can't tell you how many guys are just so fixated on the pump price, that they're giving advice, well, you can get cheaper fuel over here. And guys believe them. Well, they don't take your fuel card. Well, I'm still getting cheaper fuel, so I'll pay cash. Shocker, you just paid 50 cents more a gallon than you had to. But it was cheaper on the sign. Was it? You know, stuff like that. I'll tell you right now, when fuel up here jumped to 5.5, I was getting discounts up to like $1.30 to $1.40 a gallon off. The discounts were massive because of the fuel card I used and the app I used, and then I was getting emails showing all the fuel prices and discounts where I was going. This is where I talk about personal responsibility and taking the time out to figure out what you're doing. A lot of guys use the Mudflap app. A lot of guys use EFS. A lot of guys use ComData. It all depends where you're going. Now, don't get me wrong. ComData is expensive, but I'll tell you this. The last year I used ComData, we switched over to EFS here, but the last year I used ComData, it cost me about $7.50 to use it for the whole year. It's a lot of money. I saved $12,000. So I spent $735 to save $10,000. That trade was well worth it. And trust me, that ComData is a pretty good card depending on how you set it up. The EFS check card, still pretty good too. It's all about understanding your options, and it's all about understanding what you're doing, and it's all about understanding the difference between advice and opinions. Like I said, that sign is a liar. If you're dumb enough to pay that cash price on the sign, okay, I'm not going to question you for it. Well, I probably just did because I said if you're dumb enough. Sorry. But with a good fuel card and good backing, you get quite a bit knocked off that. So this is where a little bit of research and figuring it out yourself pays off, because when you talk fuel with guys, there's a lot of good advice. There's quite a few opinions. Figure out the two and save yourself some money. Yeah, I spent $750 to use the card that year. It's about $1 per 100. But saving damn near $11,000, I'll spend $700 to save $11,000. Get that kind of mind frame, you'll be all right. So you're probably sitting there wondering, okay, what's the point of all this? The point is pretty simple. If you're going to be wrong, guys, make sure it's you are the one who's wrong. Make sure it's your decision. Make sure it's your idea. Advice and opinions are a very different thing. And if you have an idea and you want to try it out, it's on you, man. But make sure it is on you. Like I said, I've had to tell people a lot, hey, dude, if I'm going to be wrong, you let me be wrong. I'm the one footing the bill. Figure it out. Take every piece of advice with a grain of salt. And, you know, once you start figuring it out, and once you start really understanding the process and understanding what you're doing and seeing how things are going, and mind you, this doesn't happen overnight. This is 2, 3, 5 years into it. Once you start down that road and you really start understanding your end of the business, not that guy's end, not that guy's end, your end, you start making decisions that are going to be beneficial to you. You start figuring out how to use your fuel card. You start figuring out how to manage your time. You start figuring out which route is best for you. You start figuring things out. And, you know, your reasoning could be solid. Now, hear me out here. That doesn't mean that there's just that one way to do it. There's more than one ways to do things. And somebody else might have a better way to do exactly what you're doing. So be open to that. But like I said, make sure you test it out before you dismiss it. That's all I'm saying. You know, as we go through life and as we progress in this business, there's going to be a lot of trial and error. And there's going to be a lot of opinion. There's going to be a lot of fact. There's going to be a lot of advice. There's going to be a lot of everything. At the end of the day, you got to make sure that you're doing what is right for you. That's all I'm saying. Let your opinion be yours. Let your advice be yours. And whatever you do, make sure that you're doing it, you know, the best that you can. We're professionals. At least we're supposed to be. So, hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. You guys be safe, and we'll catch you next video.